All right, we're recording.
Well, it's a sunny, windy, cold day in the Republic of the Pacific Northwest.
Yes, the communist People's Republic.
The motorcycles are blaring. Riots are down. Peace is supposedly up.
Something like that. It
Something
is,
like that.
For context, it's what, 3 days after the election?
Yeah, something like that. 3 months after election is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Before we jump into all the soup that will be this episode.
Soup. Chunky.
Yeah,
I like chunky soup.
Beef stew,
Yeah.
chunky
Hearty.
soup. We've got some whiskey. We're going to try a whiskey blend of my own concoction today.
Concoctions.
And we're going to smoke a cigar because you know what?
It's America.
We need to smoke a cigar.
It's America, and we can do what we want.
America!
For now.
Okay, let's roll.
All right.
We are the Old Fashioned Dad Podcast, seeking to love dads and men through the person and work of Jesus Christ, while entering into tough conversations on marriage, mental health, sex, and parenting, all while sipping good whiskey. Christian, how the hell are you, man? Good to see you.
You know, I've been better, but I'm alive. God's still on the throne. You know, got my health for the most part. Got a whiskey in my hand, cigar in my mouth. Good company.
Yeah, likewise.
I could complain, but I'd rather not.
Yeah, I could complain as well, but I'll take your lead on that and probably not. It's been a barring the obvious, the stress of the election and stuff like that. It's been kind of not a stellar week. A stellar week.
I concur.
For numerous reasons I won't go and complain about because I could likely have them worse.
Sure. Well, you know what I found, Christian B?
What, Christian H?
I have found that those who are successful in life, it's all about their mindset. It's how they respond to the hardships of life. So rather than, we want to acknowledge and learn from the past, but we also want to look towards the future. I liked your premise that you came up with before we hit record, which was what's next? Looking to the future?
Yeah, I was thinking about today, and a lot of different topics were rambling around in my head throughout the week, and sometimes I like being prepared, and other times I just like to see kind of how, I guess I'll use this again, soup, how the soup tastes before I actually, I don't know where I'm going with that. But
it's interesting
soup
analogy.
is a medley.
Okay.
So, and today's episode is going to be a medley of topics.
Speaking of medley, what are we drinking today?
Yeah. We'll get.
Sorry, am I pushing? Am I pushing? Sorry.
We'll get to. We're gonna jump into a lot of different topics today. I think one of which is the whiskey blend, maybe the cigar, because my cigar pack has been gracious enough to smoke some cigars from them. And
I'm appreciating that.
I think
another great one today.
Yeah, this is a really good one too. So, okay. Whiskey blend. So, a lot of whiskey podcasts and whiskey reviewers, they spend all the time reviewing and tasting a single bottle. All right? And
it's so 2019.
I know. Gosh, get with 2020. Get with the program. Oh, by the way, a little side tangent here. If 2020 wasn't more of a dumpster fire than it already is, Alex Trebek passed away.
I know. I heard about that. That's sad.
And it was just kind of a footnote in the newspaper because of everything else that's going on. I was like, he was a treasure.
Yeah.
He was a treasure. Like, there'd be no Double Jeopardy without him. Come on.
Or Single Jeopardy.
Yeah. Man. Okay. So back to the whiskey.
On that downer. Okay, continue.
I know, right? I'm full of good stuff here. I've built up a sizable whiskey collection, and I'm obviously bringing a bottle of whiskey every episode, and we're trying it, right? And the whiskeys that we've been trying they stand alone, they're very good. But I was like, man, I really want to try blending. And so over the last couple of weeks, I've just been messing around with different blends at my house because, well, I guess my whiskey by itself has just gotten boring. I don't know. So I brought along two whiskeys that I've enjoyed so far blending. I brought along High West Double Rye.
Yep, it's a classic. Love it.
And I brought along, it's a It's an American single malt from Westland Distillery. It was a collaboration whiskey between them and Filson.
Okay.
And so...
what's that called? Clubfoot? Oh, Coldfoot.
Coldfoot. Clubfoot. So Coldfoot whiskey, and there's a whole story that goes back to 1849. Is it 1849 prospecting?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, 49ers prospecting. Anyway, it goes all the way back there, and so I wanted something mellow that I think the Westland Distillery provides here in this Coldfoot whiskey, and I wanted something that had a little bit of spice to it that I think the double rye provides. And so mixed together, I've been kind of, I'm getting some fruity notes and spicy notes, and has a nice, in my opinion, vanilla finish. So I'm gonna get on that while you dropped your cigar over there. You're struggling.
I got it. I'm a mess.
You're struggling.
I am a mess. I just get nervous when in the presence of greatness. With all those followers you have on Instagram.
Man, it's a house of cards, brother.
Why are you looking around? I'm talking about you.
I was trying to see where the greatness was. I was like, are they hiding behind that garage over there?
It could just be the wind blew my cigar off the table.
What do you think of the whiskey so far?
I like it. It tastes like whiskey.
That should be a bumper sticker.
Yeah,
tastes like whiskey.
See here. Yeah, I like the combination of the rye and then whatever the other one is.
American single malt.
It tastes good. It goes down pretty. I wouldn't say necessarily smooth because it's got a little spiciness from the rye.
Yeah.
But it doesn't it's not painful. It has a good flavor to it.
Now you're kind of struggling with your cigar over there.
Am I?
It looks like it a little bit.
No, I'm doing fine.
Oh, you're doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Oh, okay.
I'm salivating a lot today, so it's kind of moist on the
one end is a little moisture.
Here, yeah.
Is moisture a word?
I don't know. It is now.
Speaking of words that you used, you used a word earlier that I was like, but recently it was recognized as an actual word. It's irregardless.
Oh yeah, regardless. Sorry.
Yeah, but for all you listeners out there, I despise the word irregardless.
Yes.
But Merriam-Webster dictionary and all their genius and whatnot decided to recognize the word because people keep using it.
Yeah, because people are dumb, so they're going to change the rules to accommodate for bad vocabulary.
Good golly. So,
anyway.
Well, you had a, I think kind of a question for me earlier, is like how the distilling is going.
Yes, yeah, because I've seen on the socials that you've been at your wife's family orchard, and you're learning some distilling. Like they make some hard cider, is that right?
Brandy,
okay.
Brandy.
Oh, nice.
So did you know, and maybe our listeners know, but did you know that if you distill a fruit, you can't call it a whiskey?
Okay.
So whiskey is distilled from grain.
Okay.
So we ran into issues there when we were trying to do some like pre-market stuff.
I didn't know.
And we were like, oh, we can't call it a whiskey. It kind of felt like one of those, well, you're a dumbass, kind of moments. Like,
you're like,
yeah,
basics of whiskey.
I'm the guy that knows a lot about whiskey, but I didn't know that.
Didn't know it had to be a grain. Okay.
So we're like, well, what are we going to call it? And they're like, well, it's distilled fruit, so it's brandy. And we're like, ah, crap. Nobody wants brandy.
Why not? Brandy's a good aperitif, good dessert wine.
That's what everybody always thinks.
Desserts.
That's what everybody always thinks. But whiskey is kind of enjoying this kind of golden, well, not golden era, it's not the right word, but renaissance.
Yes.
It's enjoying like it's up there again.
Alcoholism's on the rise, and whiskey gets you there quick.
Oh man, what did the old Gene Wilder? This is probably pretty terrible, but a quote put in the kids' movie: "Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker."
Ah.
Yeah,
I like that.
You could take that quote in a lot of different directions, and I think the time when he said it, it meant a little something different. But to his point, liquor is quicker. Any rate. Yeah. So I've been doing distilling. Let's call myself an apprentice. Right
Okay,
now.
apprentice distiller.
Yeah, I'm an apprentice. Basically, I'm doing grunt work. I learned how to drive a forklift.
Ooh, that's fun.
And because you got to move around totes and bins of apples, and I've learned how to set up and run our industrial grade crusher.
Okay.
So
The days of foot stomping your apples are...
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't know. That sucks. Crushing grapes by foot, not a problem. Crushing apples, breaking some ankles.
A little harder.
Process.
I rolled another ankle.
So we, in the I don't know, 10 or so times I've crushed apples, we will roll through about 5 to 8 bins in a day, and each bin holds about 2,000 apples.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's, you get pretty tired of, like, I juiced 22,000 apples in one day.
And labor-wise, is that just a matter of like you loading it, pushing a button, unloading, or is there more manual stuff involved?
There's a lot more to it. There's you do have to have other labor there, so people literally feeding the machine. It's like this little elevator that ferries the apples up and then drops them into this huge grinder.
Okay.
And then I have to stand by and make sure the machine is constantly like clear of pulp and stuff like that, and then I have to make sure that like the juice is regularly going into the totes that we store it in for fermentation. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the labor. Okay. And that's not even the distilling part. Anyway, I'm also learning how to run our stills too, so a lot of terminology.
Sounds cool.
And I get to also barrel taste.
Ooh.
Right out of the barrel, the product that we have.
Now, does that taste good fresh, or is it something that needs to sit and seep or steep or something?
I like that. Seep.
Seep. That's a seep.
We'll go with ferment.
Okay. Ferment,
so once you juice the apples, they go into these big, like, 100-gallon plastic totes, or maybe more, honestly, bigger than that. And we let them sit for anywhere from like a month to 6 months. Okay. And then from there, when we're ready to distill, we then basically siphon the juice out of the tote into the still. We have a 400-gallon still, and we make distillate. And then once we have the distillate, then we put it in the barrels.
Okay, and that ferments, and then...
And, I mean, once it's in the barrels, it ages.
Okay.
So when it's in the tote, it's fermenting.
Ah, okay.
So it's just, interacting with the wild yeast that's in the air, and it smells a little bit like apple cider vinegar by the time you're ready to distill it.
Okay.
And so basically, all distilling is just stripping the juice of any alcohol content. And what the heck is that thing? It's an eyeball.
It's an eyeball.
So it's just stripping the juice of the alcohol.
Okay. So the process is crushing, fermenting, aging, and then it's ready, or does it be like filtered?
Fermenting is the aging. So it's fermenting. Okay. It's crushing, fermenting, distilling,
okay,
and then aging.
Okay. What happens if you drink it right after the distilling? Is it taste new, or is not any alcohol in it?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of process to that. I've always heard this from distillers. It's called heads, hearts, and tails.
Okay.
And so basically the heads, like the acetone, so stuff that's coming off, like the first stuff that's coming out of the still that's being produced is like 90, 95 ABV. So double that and you have your proof. Yeah. And so most of the time we drink stuff, I think the strongest stuff we've drank here was like 120 proof.
120, yeah. That was
so like
last week's,
60 ABV. And so the stuff that's coming off the still right off the top is the heads, and that's poison, man. You do not want to drink that.
Okay.
But the stuff, so that's called the heads. And then you have the hearts. That's the stuff that you really want.
Okay.
And so we get that stuff somewhere between, we'll collect hearts around 75 and 80 ABV. So that's, 150, 160.
So what do you do with the heads? Is that waste, or
is
that?
That's waste.
Okay.
Yeah, we get rid of that. And so we collect all the hearts, the 75 to 80 ABV. And then once it starts getting down around the tails, which is going to be, could be 70, likely 60 to 70 ABV is what we're also going to get rid of. We might add a little bit of the tails into the hearts, but the hearts are where you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I've had it straight off the still. It's pretty tasty.
Sure. So what, in the context of what's next or what we're working on or whatever. What does that mean for you? Are you going to quit counseling and go be a full-time distiller? Or?
Well, my father-in-law wants the distillery to be successful, and for it to be
a good thing.
Yeah, right. and he's provided a lot of the capital, as well as the orchards provided a lot of capital, and so there really hasn't been a succession plan in place, because the head distiller, I mean, he knows his stuff. He's a great blender, but he doesn't want to do this much longer, maybe another couple of seasons, and so there really needs to be somebody that's going to take it over, and a younger generation. And so I threw my hat in the ring and I said, hey, yeah, I'll do this.
He must be really old if you're considered the younger generation.
Yeah, right. So Julie and I are kind of tasked with figuring out how to make this, at least in my mind, a multi-million-dollar distillery.
Okay. And that's going to be a separate entity from the orchard.
It will be, yeah. It's going to be a separate business, but the orchard will still be involved. But yeah, ultimately, it's Julia and I, how do we grow this thing beyond what it is now and produce an award-winning product? And so I'm excited, honestly, to be a part of that. And, I don't know where the counseling is going to fit in there. I think because I've got that machine already humming, I don't need to do a ton. Mm-hmm. It's possible that it falls by the wayside at some point, and I just have to focus all my time and energy on distilling. It's possible that I'm able to do both.
Yeah.
I don't know. Got my hands on a lot of different pies at the moment.
I like pie.
Pie is real good, especially pumpkin pie, right?
Yeah, so good.
Especially pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's next for me.
Okay.
But I was, when I was thinking about this topic today, what's next? I was obviously thinking about what just happened with the election.
What, there's an election? I missed it.
Wait.
I haven't heard a thing about it.
Shoot. Sorry.
My sarcasm.
I didn't want to spoil anything for you. There was an election.
Yes. Okay. Yes. It's hard to miss.
And so I was thinking like, man, and the election is not over.
No, I mean, despite half the country wants it to be over, the other half's like, it's not over till it's over. Till the orange man sings, I guess.
Yeah, right. I have a lot of family members. I got family members that are pro-Trump. I got family members that are pro-Biden.
Sure.
And before I go any further, I didn't want this episode necessarily to be like, let's hash out all the conspiracy theories. I didn't want to do that.
So many.
Like, we've got Facebook to do that for us.
Sure. Yeah, if we want to get enraged, so you can just get on our social media. You don't need a podcast for that.
Yeah.
At least not this podcast.
But I did want to stop and at least, it seems pertinent to talk about on some level. This is current circumstances. These are what people are interested in. You and I are going to, impacted and affected by this. Like, affects us relationally. Like, so I thought, what's next in regards to our country, and especially as Christian dads? What are we doing here? How do we respond? Yeah. Oh, were you asking me? Do you want a response? I don't know I was actually stalling because I got to relight my cigar.
Oh, okay. Well, I will pick up the slack on that one.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. It obviously affects me like every American in the sense of, whether or not it's your guy or gal in the White House, and the policies aligned with values and all that kind of stuff. I think. It also affects me in the sense that I'm still in the Army National Guard, have been for 18 years. I'm a commissioned officer. So it kind of, it's National Guard, so technically our governor is my commander-in-chief unless we get federalized, in which case then the president is. But those policies greatly affect us in my capacity in the military. So... I've got vested, I don't know if I say interest, but it impacts me on a different level than just being a citizen as well. And I don't plan, even though I'm at 18 years, I don't plan getting out anytime soon. As a chief warrant officer, I've got a pretty long runway for my military career. While if I was enlisted or officer, they would start trying to kick you out at 20 years. But anyway, I think as Christian dads, despite who we voted for and our views, I think it's important to stay grounded. We kind of started off talking about, like, despite everything happening in the world, God's still on the throne. He's still in control.
Wait a second. Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
God's on the throne?
He's on the throne.
What in the world?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Thing. Holy smokes. Oh, it's nice. Nice cigar. So, I mean, I think that's, because, I mean, we're not, well, I'd say, talking to each other, Christian to Christian, here, we're not shy about, where we land politically. I'm definitely more on the conservative, libertarian side of things, and frankly, I voted for Trump, which is, this is the first time I've said that, because you have to kind of be underground in Seattle if you're not full-on communist, or I should say socialist, card-carrying liberal, which is more the flavor of things here socially. But I largely keep it under wraps. I was having a talk with Jenny the other day, my wife, and she's like, why be ashamed about it? Like, take a stand, this and that. And I was trying to kind of reason with her. I'm like, well, listen, I've got a business. I'm not going to get on social media and like take a stand just to take a stand as far as like I voted for so-and-so, or like get involved in political threads, because it's a time suck, it's energy suck, it's emotion suck. Like there's no value in that. I'm not going to change anyone's mind on social media. It's only going to polarize. People who agree with me are going to like it and rally around it, while people who don't are probably going to say nasty things, unfriend you, whatever. All that to say, I'm a big fan of people first, and I think God is too. I don't. We as Christians need to make sure that our first allegiance is to Jesus. And I think there's room for Christians to have be on a spectrum as far as politics go. I think it's limited. I mean, I think if you're voting for a party that is unashamedly pro-abortion, I think that's an issue, because there's no way to reconcile that with God. That is an evil. And that's one of the big reasons I lean the way I do politically, but I also think it's important to be a critical thinker and look past.
I haven't heard those two words put together before. Critical.
They used to teach that in college. How to think, not what to think.
Think.
Yeah.
It sounds foreign to me.
And unfortunately, it's hard work, and so not a lot of people are investing in being consistent with how they process ideas and stuff. And I would love to see a time where we get back to being able to debate the validity and value of ideas, and not associate the value of an idea based on who says it, which is largely how people.
That's even possible.
It's how people relate to each other nowadays, and it's really sad. Like if a minority person says something, that's supposed to be more true than if a white person says something. Well, no, either the idea is good or the idea is bad. We should have a discussion about it, not I can't believe you said that, you're a terrible person. Yeah. I'm going to destroy you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of covert racism and, inadvertent racism. And
in what way? What do you mean?
We should definitely be valuing people based on their image bearing of God, as opposed to their skin. So if we say one person's voice is more valuable based on their skin color, whereas another person's voice is not as valuable based on their skin color, right, that's still racism. Yeah, it doesn't matter which direction it's geared towards. If you're treating people differently because of the way they look, or you're lumping them into a certain racial class, I mean, that's not good. That's not compatible with Scripture. I don't care what label you put on it. I don't care what political party you affiliate with. There's no way to justify that. Right. Right. But kind of getting back to, I guess, the thrust of my point is that I would love to see a culture that is willing to treat one another like humans and be able to talk ideas rationally instead of knee-jerk emotional things. Do you think that's possible, though? I know I keep interrupting, but do you think that's possible, though, with, with people that don't know Christ? I mean, I know God's common grace exists.
I think it is because I do think there's common grace as far as truth. All truth, like we've talked about before, all truth is God's truth, whether or not it has a Christian label attached to it. And I think, if you live your life based on God's truth, whether or not you love God, your life will generally be better, right? You treat people decently, you don't lie, cheat, steal, I think your life's going to be better than if you're trying to screw people over every chance you get for personal gain.
Definitely, at least from an integrity stance, you can hold your head high.
Right. But I guess what I was trying to say in the conversation with my wife was it really saddens me that so many people, including a lot of Christian friends I have, get caught up on the superficial. Like they're making a judgment call on personality. Like if someone who's well spoken and polished and says all the right things, but what they believe and their policies they dictate are going to this is strong language, destroy the country or move us in a direction that is not pro-humanity or is not in line with how God wants things to be in this world. We need to be able to see past that versus maybe, someone who has a more bombastic personality and is looser with the truth. But the things that they believe or stand for or make happen, the actions, end up being more pro-humanity, more pro-justice. We as Christians need to be able to look past the superficial.
Some people would say on that point that you're making that that's being dismissive of a leader's toxicity.
Well, I think we also need to recognize, I don't know anyone who is trying to make the case that Trump's a good guy per se. And that was my big hang up, why I didn't vote for him in 2016. I'm like, I can't bring myself to vote for someone like this.
Yeah.
But then after 4 years and seeing what he actually did versus, kind of his abrasive nature, I mean, I think that's much more in line with I wouldn't make the argument as a Christian, but I'd say it's much more, the things that got done under him are much more in line with the gospel than what I see Democrats generally aligning with. And obviously there's room for discussion, but the big key there is that we're willing to have civil discussion about it.
Well, that's Christians. That's a hard one to choke down. I think for a lot of people, that don't know Jesus, or maybe even people that do know Jesus.
Sure.
Is looking at a leader like Trump and saying he's done things that are more in line with the gospel than the Democrats. I think that's the hard part for people to try and reconcile, because you look at the way that he conducts himself, and you're like, the Bible talks about being above reproach.
Sure.
Right? For all leaders.
Right.
And that's not a subjective term of what that looks like. You either are above reproach or you aren't.
Right.
And so I think that's the hard part is in the way that he conducts himself, does it seem like he's above reproach?
I'd say definitely not. But I think my retort to that with Christian friends that have used that line of logic is, if I was using that as my standard, I wouldn't vote, because no politician, I don't know any politician that's above reproach. Now you could use the voting for lesser two evils, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I mean, I think there's a real challenge there. And it doesn't help that with things being so kind of polarized as they are, we tend to just dismiss people we disagree with or ideas we disagree with, because it's easier. It's much easier if I surround myself with people that agree with me. Or if I, take an extreme approach and, say, the other side is evil, and therefore I can treat them terribly because I'm justifying,
But how
whatever.
do you, regardless of who our next leader is, so right now, supposedly it's Biden, but who knows what's going to happen over the course of the next month and a half?
Sure.
How do you, one, think critically, and also love those who disagree with you when, at least here in America, like 24/7, we are bombarded with multiple narratives on like how events are playing out and, you know, how one side is, you know, acting versus the other side. I mean, it's like both the right and the left, conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats are all like culpable in creating narratives that would paint the other one as the enemy. You know, so how do you engage in critical thinking? How do you actually, and then, and love? Like how do you love those who disagree with you?
Sure. I mean, it's difficult. I think it starts with me. I think it starts with you. I think it starts with each individual listener to be honest enough with, you know, how we view the world and how we treat others, to like be consistent with how we apply our logic and our standards and our morals. And I say that in the sense of like it's real easy for me to, you know, look at, you know, quote the other side and judge them based on X, Y, and Z. But if I'm not willing to do that to my side, that's not being honest. Like, that's not okay. You know, and I think that's one of my biggest issues with this last 4 years is, you know, yeah, Trump has his issues, and I think part of the reason people feel like he's, you know, Hitler incarnate is because the media's, you know, I say the media, you know, in air quotes here, is largely culpable in painting him that way, in polarizing people, and making sure that the narrative that gets out there is heavily lopsided against him. And I say that because, like, it wasn't until, 2 months ago that I started, you know, actually digging a little bit, you know, looking at like, well, I might have to vote for this guy. You know, let's see what that means. And I started, you know, seeing not just like rumors, but like, no, he did this, he passed that, he had these results, and I'm like, I never heard about any of this over 4 years. Why is that? Well, it's because the media is too busy reporting about his tweets and not about his actual substantive policies that are actually affecting people for the good. And like, I think that's a disgrace if, you know, the way we get our information is so filtered and so biased towards or against certain political parties or ideas that we can't get the information. That, you know, I just think it's unfair. Like I don't care what side you're on, you know, what your affiliation is. The news should be about reporting the news, not here's our narrative and you will only put out information that supports that narrative. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I'm all for, you know, free press and stuff, but what if that free press starts, you know, and I'd make the argument, report stuff in such a way that they are meddling in elections. I mean, how can you? I think there's a pretty strong case to be said that, like, you know, if you only hear the bad things about one candidate and you only hear the good things about the other, so that your perspective of the truth is skewed, that seems like an issue to me. You know, and to me that comes back to like individual responsibility about like how I process things. You know, like if I need to be fair in my analysis of stuff, you know? And if we're doing that about our political leaders, like I think that's an issue. Like where did fairness go in our pursuit of truth and what's actually happening? I don't know. It's a little bit of a rant, but I mean, I guess all that to say, it seems really not okay that things are so misreported. And I saw this firsthand during the election. Like, I was glued to all sorts of different analysis and stuff, and I'd watch, you know, President Trump get up there and he'd say stuff, and then immediately afterwards, the commenters would say, he's lying about this, he's lying about that, that's not true. This, and I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. I just watched that, and now you're already spinning it.
I saw the same thing.
That's not what he said.
Yeah.
And they just have the audacity to like assume that people are too stupid to call them on it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate your rant. I do. I really do. I'm just, you know. Yeah.
And that's not to dismiss, you know, his you know, Trump's issues.
But that's the thing as Christians, you know, especially any Christian that votes for Trump is, you know, like there's a reductionistic view, right? Of like, well, if you vote for Trump, you're automatically a racist. you vote for Biden,
right.
you're automatically not a racist,
right.
and
which is totally unfair.
Not an evil person,
right.
and
I'm just amazed how many people still believe that. Like, you could very easily find dozens of clips where President Trump is asked point blank. He's like, "I disavow the KKK. I disavow," like he's denouncing it. People still believe that he supports them because the media does not put it out there. When they accuse him of something, he'll address it, and you don't ever hear him addressing it. So it just sticks that he's, this terrible human being.
And I mean, and everybody's like this, amateur sleuth detective when it comes to, disseminating and deciphering information that's out there. Like, oh, you heard that? What source did you use? Oh, you used the Federalist.
Right.
Oh, that's really conservative. Oh, you were listening to ABC. Oh, well, that's really liberal.
Which I think is also an issue, because if you're basically going to say, well, this source leans this way, therefore they're not credible and I'm not going to listen to them, well, now your head's so far up your ass because you're only going to agree with sources you already agree with.
Right, yeah.
Which is going to have a slant.
Right, yeah.
And they're just going to feed you the information that you already agree with.
Yeah, so how do we, and that's why I, come back to the original topic is, and all of this is relevant, is what's next is, so we have in front of us a fairly unclear landscape.
Yeah.
And as Christians, like, we're always going to have people that disagree with us because, well, we believe in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. We believe that,
increasingly not popular.
Life is meant to worship Christ, and that's how we feel like God created us, and that's what we adhere to, and how we vote politically, does implicate what our religious beliefs are, and so we're going to increasingly be called to love people in this time that, man, are really difficult to love.
Sure. I mean, I think we just always have to take the high road. I believe that's what, we're called to turn the other cheek, right? And even if I was the most, adamant, I don't know.
Adamant.
Yeah. Of Trump supporters, that doesn't mean I get to treat people who voted.
Ardent.
Thank you.
That's ardent. There we go. Ardent.
Yeah. That doesn't mean I get to treat people who don't agree with me terribly, even if they treat me terribly. Like that's not turning the other cheek. That's being worldly, right?
Yeah.
Eye for an eye. And so that's why I say, lead with people first. Like, yes, politics matter. Yes, what we believe matters. Worldview matters. But I think above that, what does it look like to love not just your friends, but your enemies?
Yeah.
If you want to use that language. And I think that starts with, looking at the other side and not immediately going to, well, they believe that because they're evil. Like we can make a case that Democrats want, or the most left-leaning progressives of that party want to dismantle America because they believe it's inherently evil and racist and rebuild it in the socialist utopia. I think that's evil. But I don't think they're doing it because they hate people. I think they actually believe that's what's best for society.
Yeah.
And so I think if we start from an assumption that most people around us are not Hitler, you can start having rational conversations about, well, why do you believe that this way of thinking or this way of running a government is better than this way?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, so much of politics in the world has been boiled down to, well, you believe that because you're a terrible human being, because you're evil. It's like, you're not going to get anywhere, and that's not a gospel-centered worldview.
Yeah. No, I think that's spot on. I think that we have to work hard, and this is where it comes, like as dads, we have to be in prayer, we have to be in our scripture, we have to be going to church, being a part of the body, and if we're not, we're isolating ourselves, and I think there's a higher probability of dehumanizing anybody who disagrees with you, and really honestly becoming a weird, maybe hostile person. And that's not what we're called to as Christians. We're called to be loving and kind, turn the other cheek, and love those who would do wrong to us, turn the other cheek type of stuff.
Right.
And the dehumanizing thing is like, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one.
It's
like,
hard.
Because it's really easy to do.
Right.
Really easy to do.
I mean, in the context of being a dad, I mean, your kids pick up on things, right? They're, even my son, who's 9 and totally ADHD off the walls, he's always listening, and we had these discussions, because he's, we're fortunate the school he goes to is meeting in person. So all these discussions on the way home from school, hey, what do you guys talk about? And he's like, oh, my friend, voted for Biden, and I voted for Trump. I'm like, well, you didn't actually vote. Here's how this works, whatever. But
in their minds,
but
they
he
voted.
picks up that like we, are pro-Trump as opposed to pro-Biden or whatever, and I think just naturally, it's that person's stupid because they want Biden. I'm like, well, why are you for Trump? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, this is why we're for Trump. This is why we think voting for him's good. Now remember, your friend, they're doing what you're doing. Like, they're pro-Biden because their parents are. They're just copying their parents, and that's fine. Yeah. And you don't treat them differently. You don't say mean things to them because they think something different than you. So trying to do that, and it keeps you honest, because I mean, if I'm bad-mouthing, if I'm angry and bad-mouthing and ranting in the house, like, kids are going to pick up on that, and they're going to treat other
little
kids
sponges
that way.
Yeah.
So I mean, that keeps us honest. So I mean, you want to not just think about what you're saying publicly or on social media, but like how you have these discussions in your household. What your kids are hearing. What you're teaching them. And
I mean, honestly, like, whatever comes out of your heart, that reflects kind of the person that you are and what you value. And so, like, if you say you value human life and you're pro life, but then like you end up being just super nasty,
just an asshole.
Yeah, just a jerk to anybody that disagrees with you. Sure. It's like, well, you might be pro-life in the sense that you don't want to see human babies killed, but you're not pro-life in the sense of you want to see other people thrive in their lives.
Sure.
And so like, and I think that's a big point that's missed is like, you do have to, if you're going to espouse your values out there, man, you really need to be loving. You really need to be loving. Yeah. And
especially as a Christian, I mean.
Dude, especially as a Christian. If you put Jesus loves you as a bumper sticker on your car and you're driving around with road rage and flipping people off,
right? I mean,
what kind of testimony is that?
Right. I expect that from non-Christians, but if fellow Christians are doing that, or they're saying terrible things against their friends that voted for Trump, I'm like, that's an issue.
Well, and that includes how Christians conduct themselves online.
Right.
Like, you can't say Jesus loves you and then say every Democrat out there is a douchebag baby killer.
Be like, Jesus loves you, but I don't. You're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Right.
You absolutely cannot do that. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter what you think that they did. You can't go around going like, hey, all Democrats are pedophiles.
Right.
You can't say that.
Right. If you don't want someone blanketing you into whatever group someone thinks you're in, don't do it to other people. Like,
no. And honestly, like, putting up all kinds of memes online, I don't understand how that's furthering the gospel either. Like, engaging in political discourse online, how is that gospel?
Right.
How?
Yeah.
I literally don't see it.
Right.
And I understand that people are like, well, this is your voice. I'm like, no. Your voice is your actions. Your voice is, no.
Right.
That's just laziness online.
Right. Which is why I advocate for people, like, if you care about these things, you want to have conversations that matter, meet with someone, social distancing outside, whatever the COVID environment allows, but have those conversations in person with people that you've got vested relationships with, because you hopefully aren't going to, call them, a racist asshole to their face. Hopefully you'll have a conversation about, starting from Jesus and work from there as to, why you guys have a difference.
And that's the beauty of the gospel that I think that a lot of people don't know or understand, is that the gospel is intensely relational, and so much encouragement to be relational. And so, it's really important. I mean, we're going to have an impact on the people that are in our local community. We're not going to have an impact on Congress or Senate, because we're just two guys sitting in a backyard.
Right.
But we will have an impact on different families that are around us, right. And we will be known for the way that we conduct ourselves. Oh, you remember Christian H? Man, he was a heck of a guy. Christian B, though, on the other hand, he went off on Facebook, and he's just a nut.
Yeah.
And that's what people remember. And so I think it's important that for the limited people that we will come into contact with, man, we have a positive influence for them and be gospel oriented. Yeah. Gosh, we have to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of addresses, how we should be engaging with each other as Christians and with the world. And I guess I would extend that to, when the legal battles are done, the recounts are done, and the final official words in, how do we deal with that? Do we lament the next 4 years, if our side doesn't win, or are we bitter and angry and say the election was stolen?
Yeah.
I think we need to be pro-justice, pro-truth, but at the end of the day, there has to be a certain amount of trust in the system and the outcome, because ultimately, where's God's will in that, and what's my response to that?
Because we do believe that God's on the throne and God's in control. God appoints leaders and God removes leaders. And so I'm not going to assume that I know God's will. I will trust that God is doing what God is doing, and I will seek to be a positive influence and show Christ within my family first, and then within my community second.
Yeah.
We might need to wrap up.
Why, are you freezing?
I'm freezing. I'm turning into a popsicle out here.
Yeah.
For those of you that can't see us, we are sitting in the Pacific Northwest, freezing our buns off.
Yeah, I'm literally shaking.
I'm shaking. I'm like literally not from the conversation, but from the cold temps.
Yeah, it's because we're not drinking enough whiskey.
That might be
another
it.
round.
But,
yeah, I mean, we could pause and take it inside if you want.
What's that?
We could pause and take it inside if you want.
I don't know that I have much more to say.
All right.
My brain's frozen over.
Have we covered kind of what you're initially thinking about? What's next, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a question of what's next that doesn't necessarily have a conclusion to it.
Sure.
It doesn't have a definitive answer because it's
just kind of a bookmark in where we are in time right now.
Yeah, where do we go? It's very fluid and dynamic, so it's changing. It's on a day-to-day basis, but our response should still be the same because of the Great Commission. The Great Commission is hey, go out and make disciples and love people for the sake of Jesus Christ. Go do that. So that shouldn't change based upon the political temperature or political circumstances.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen. All right.
Yeah, and the famous words of Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other.
Be excellent, man. Well, dads, we love you. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you got something out of this episode. I know for me, this was more of a therapeutic episode than it was giving you guys something. But if you got something out of it, awesome. I got to talk about distilling and whiskey and smoke cigars with Christian, one cigar with Christian, and talk about what's next. So I'm encouraged. I'm going to go and love the people in my community. Christian, I know you'll probably do the same.
Yeah, I'm going to go remove those hateful tweets right now.
All right, dads. Check us out on all the socials. And until next time, stay frosty.